So, when you look at the issues of voter education, sensitization, and some of the other things that need to be done well before an election, what are your thoughts about the current status of the INEC election budget within the National Assembly? We understand it's now 143 billion that's been approved as opposed to the 189 billion that was requested. What are your thoughts?
Well, we in the Commission, we are very mindful of the tightness of the time. But issues that concern the National Assembly, issues that concerns the presidency, we just have to wait until they come out. The touted figures keep on changing every day. But I want to assure you that when there is a pronouncement, which is the, what do we call it? Which is the appropriation itself, it becomes a law, we can talk about it. But as of now, this is still between the presidency and the legislature. Whatever they come up with, I'm sure the Commission will come up with a stand when this comes out.
So, I'm just looking at now, did you receive any complaint on bribery? People having to pay money to get, which was very disturbing when we saw that. People having to pay money to get their cards or to be able to do their registration and things of the sort.
We got complaints from 3 states. I'm very, very honest with you. And we alerted and we investigated. The outcome of the investigation is not out. But what we did was to make sure that we take a preventive measure over this. It is supposed to be free. It's just like the issue of vote buying. The people themselves should not even give. It is free. In a chaotic situation like that, it is very, very easy to extort. When you have a chaotic situation, people will extort. But when people refuse to give bribes or induce people with money, you will say that we go down to the root of this. Now, it's not just that alone. You will see somebody, it's just the attitude, somebody who comes in very late and meets about 400 people online. He wants to be the first. The first thing that he thinks about is the power of his pocket that, oh, if I can do this, if I can bribe, all this we took into consideration. The 3 states that were involved, we really went there, did some investigation, and took very preemptive measures, at least preventive measures, in ensuring that this is not spread across the nation. But anywhere where you have such chaotic situation, honestly, you will rule out this type of inducement.
Well, we're now being joined by Alhaji Shehu Gabam, who is the National Secretary of the Social Democratic Party. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
A great pleasure. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm sure that, your members must have also tried to register. I'm sure you have your thoughts on the continuous voter registration process as organized by INEC. What were your thoughts, and are you happy now that the process is concluded? Because INEC says it must come to an end.
Well, it is rather disappointing because INEC sees some of the exercises as maybe it's an exercise that belongs to the institution, not to the Nigerian people. It's supposed to be a continued exercise because virtually every 4 years, or if there's a midterm election, there must be an election. And by law, once we are 18 years, we are eligible to vote. So there's lack of efficiency from the side of INEC. And what we saw in the recent by-election, even though it has been the exercise in the past, was more of surrendering some of its fundamental responsibility to the detriment of people who feel they have resources to buy votes. There was no attempt to rescue the situation at all. I was just coming from by-election and I saw what happened. It's a sort of more of legitimizing it from what we saw in Ekiti and other places. It's rather very disappointing because the information department from the INEC, from the National Orientation Agency, virtually have gone out. We haven't seen effort to sensitize people to understand the fundamental responsibility of queuing to vote. An exercise that has been protected by our nation as a sanctity. And the sanctity of that process was absolutely absent.
Mr. Gabam, let me ask you, when you look at that scenario now, how much of this has to do with ineffective sensitization, according to your view, and how much of this has to do with the fact that security agencies that have to do with law enforcement and criminal apprehension are not doing what they're supposed to be doing on the field? Can INEC, for example, arrest somebody who's involved in that process, for example?
Well, I believe my brother is from INEC, and from what we saw on ground, you can see clearly whether there's an act of negligence or I don't care attitude from the security agencies not to contain the situation. Also, from sort of information, not verifiable, perhaps you may make some clarification on that. The police always says that it is the INEC that will say this one have committed an offense. It's not the police to do that themselves. So these are contradictions that need to be taken care of, because an election deals with the entire nerves of the nation. On the day of election, public holiday is being declared. Whatever comes to the government is off, individual is off, because it's an important exercise. So protecting that exercise, the sanctity of the exercise, is very key, because that gives a credibility to anybody that got elected.
Let me quickly take you back to voter education. I mean, definitely, it's also a part of the election, because all of this will definitely dovetail into the final election day. You have said that, you know, the process that INEC seems to have adopted seems to be about the institution instead of the Nigerian people, if I get you correctly.
Yeah.
But INEC says that, in their own defense, that we must have a cut-off date so that we can clean out the register, we can ensure that we actually have a credible register, and also ensure that we are able to print out the cards for those who have actually registered. You don't think that that is a valid enough
It's simply because they have not prepared
reason?
for the, it's simply because they have not prepared for the election. When you get to the civilized thing to do as mark of responsibility was within the framework of that day of registration to suggest maybe 1 week you must get your permanent voter's card. They are using that to the detriment of those who join to the queue, takes them hours to register, and they will have no access to the permanent voters card. And they will deny them voting on the day of the election.
What is INEC's
Because the
interest
by-election in most of the states, they deny those with the temporary voters card from voting. I don't know where the law comes from.